Okay, our next speaker is Marty Link. Her positions have been a program specialist in the groundwater management area, unit supervisor for the groundwater unit in the water quality assessment area section, and water quality division administrator at Department of Environmental Quality, now the Department of Environment and Energy. So Marty is a licensed professional geologist in Nebraska and has lived here for quite a long time, I think.
Thank you very much. Trying to figure out the zapper configuration here. My Y buddy there taking pictures. Okay, my job here is to rush through a whole bunch of slides. And Sue asked me, how are you going to go through 25 slides in 10 minutes? I go, watch me fly. So I'm just going to give you a real broad overview of the water quality of the state of Nebraska. But that's what our agency does. We kind of do a lot of monitoring and a lot of assessing and things like that. So I'm going to go through surface water first. This is where we do our stream water monitoring every month, 101 sites. We do a basin rotation where we get around to each basin. We've split the 13 basins up into 6. And so every 6 years, we're back to where we started. And I'm just going to fly through these, not going to spend a lot of time. There's people that work for us that could spend the whole hour, talking about any one of these programs. Our basin rotation this year was the Loop and the Middle Platte. We finished up last week on this stuff, and next year we'll be headed up to the Niobrara Basin. Mike Archer is going to talk next about this. This is a very important part of our monitoring, but I'm going to let Mike talk about that. Needless to say, blue-green algae is pretty icky. Surface other monitoring that we do, again, I'm just going to run through this, but we do an ambient lake monitoring program. We have fish tissue to judge whether it's good enough to eat even, and whether there should be fish consumption warnings. Stream biologicals, this just goes out once to these 30 to 40 sites per year and does a lot of assessment of the habitat. All in all, we do upwards of sometimes 40,000 analyses per year, which is a lot of data too, which I'm not even going to talk about how we manage that. What do we use this for? Well, we assess every 2 years, we assess the surface waters of the state. And this is the one from 2018. We're starting to work on another one that's going to come out in April next year. And the red dots and lines are impaired. Dots are lakes, lines are streams. And the green ones mean it's pretty much okay. So I know the color has kind of gotten washed out on this system, but we have this online and stuff too. What are the most common lake impairments? Nutrients. We have standards for nutrients, for nitrogen and phosphorus, and this causes the most impairments of our lakes. Next up is fish consumption. Our most common stream impairments are bacteria, which of course is not only from humans, but also all the little animals that spend time out in nature here. But also cows and pigs, and some of that runoff comes off fields and gets into the streams. We are working with the NRDs and others to come up with plans. This shaded in areas show where all we have plans, watershed management plans or basin plans that are going to address many of these problems. And now we're starting to move more into plans for groundwater too, as is shown by the Brazil area. Going to move over to groundwater now. We got lots of data for groundwater too. The top ones, the top things here, these are all in that clearinghouse database that is online on DNR's website. The other ones is other data that is available through our files, but there is a lot of data out there, and most of it is nitrate data. Through the obligatory nitrogen cycle I know there's going to be people who are going to talk about this more, but just to remind us that the nitrogen is not only in surface water, but also groundwater. There's a lot of sources of it, including fertilizer guys, people putting fertilizer out on the fields, but also septic tanks and industry and air deposition, and also cows, pigs, et cetera, et cetera. So what impacts quality? Well, this map here is a land use map. And I believe we'll have speakers all day talking about the impact of land use. But Dark green is soybeans, light green is corn. The pinkish purpley stuff is small grains like wheat, oats, etc. We have a lot of farming that goes on in this state. And right along with that is the use of groundwater. And this shows the density of well, or not the density of wells, but shows where all the wells are at. The green ones are irrigation wells, and the blue ones are domestic wells. That's our biggest amount of wells. And there's about 185,000 wells, and that was last year about this time, that are registered in the state. Now, this is a density of irrigation wells, and we kind of, I think Sue talked a little bit about that, and maybe you did too. The red spots there in the Central Platte and further over here, that's over 16 wells per square mile. That's a lot of wells. Now, guess what matches up with that? Nitrates. This is the outline there. Compare these two. This is the density of irrigation wells. This is nitrate in groundwater. Perhaps there's a connection. As has been mentioned before too, sandy soils and your shallow depth of water is a big indicator also of where you're going to find nitrate in groundwater. But the red here is over 20 parts per million, excuse me. Now you've seen this map a couple times. This is our the median of the most nitrate, of the sampling, most recent nitrate by township. So we've aggregated that data by township. And this is through 2017. We're working on the new report that'll come out December 1st right now. And the trend from 1998 through 2017 is definitely going up a little bit. Now, I do like to point out that yes, this is definitely data that is true and it's good data, but also keep in mind that anytime you have a problem, you're probably going out and sampling that problem area just maybe a little bit more. And I'm not saying this is not a true reflection of nitrate in groundwater, but we maybe it's not a complete ambient neutral type of network. It is often focused on areas that you know you have a problem. Something to keep in mind. Now, I was supposed to also, given the fact of just sort of tying this all in with the Bazille management area, it's up there, 756 square miles, parts of 3 counties and 4 different NRDs, which does make it a complicated, interesting situation to deal with. And it is the home of around 7,000 or so people. We have whatever number that is, 8, 10 wellhead protection areas that serve public water supplies. So the red line surrounds the area that we have modeled that shows where the groundwater is coming from for the public water supplies for these folks. So each one of these is a public water supply wellhead protection area. And we like to try and focus our management activities in those areas because that's where we're hoping we get the most bang for the buck out of putting best management practices out on the ground. For example, here's Creighton's wellhead protection area, and it extends in an odd direction. Groundwater, as Sue just talked about, is very complicated, and it flows towards the wells in Creighton towards the northwest, which is not the usual direction in Nebraska for groundwater flow. This is the average nitrate concentration for each well that has been sampled more than once. The red and dark orange are above 10 parts per million. And many of the activities, though, and this is the good news, many of the activities that you do for surface water also help impact groundwater and make the loadings less. And so that's really good news because here we have kind of a combination of many things. This is the Santee Sioux Reservation boundaries, and some of this stream right in here, the Bazille, is impaired for surface water. So things that we do on the surface not only help the groundwater, but they also help the surface water. And we're really happy that we are getting that benefit out of doing activities on the ground.